by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
I've been there.
I have a dream.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And we're back. I'm really excited today about today's guest. Veronica Swift is an author of an Illuminati primer, Understanding the System Through the Eyes of Its Whistleblowers. She spent years digging into testimony from people who say that they've lived inside what they call the system. And she's managed to piece those voices together into a big picture view of how power, secrecy, and ritual operate behind the scenes. You might also know her from her blog, Lifting the Wool, where she shares ongoing research and commentary. What stands out about Veronica is her ability to take an overwhelming amount of information and make it clear, direct, and accessible. Her work has sparked real conversations about hidden influence and how it shows up in the world around us today. Today, we'll dive into her research, what she's uncovered through these whistleblowers, and how it's changed the way she sees the world. I also hope she'll help me figure some of the things out that I've discovered that I'm still scratching my head about. How you doing today, Veronica? Welcome.
It's so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to talking to you because I think we're speaking about the same things, just maybe using a little bit different language. I started learning about the occult about 5 years ago next month, and so I tend to use the language of the whistleblowers that I follow. But there's also much more different ways of terming things that I think is done a lot of times so that they can keep themselves hidden. And I think a lot of people are talking about the same thing, only we don't know it. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you and getting on the same page and making all these different terms good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is, for example, so who are they, right? Who are they? Check
your mic, please.
Check my mic. Okay, I'm checking my mic. I'm checking. Yeah, my mic is good. Are there? Okay, Veronica's 5x5. Pete, your sound's off. Sergeant Stadenko. Let me make sure that my. I'm sorry about this, Veronica. I have audio issues. It is off.
Here we go. That should.
Ah, there you are. That's better.
That's much better. Thank you, audience, for checking my mic. I did set this before the show started, and I have. I don't know if it's technical problems or, I'm being trolled by NSA or something, but. In any case, yes, the audio is much better now. Thank you. See, the problem is that I can always hear my good audio, but you can't always hear my good audio. So there it is. We're getting back to names. Michael Hoffman, who's somebody. Do you know Michael Hoffman's work, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
He's a great resource. But his reference point, what he calls the secret power that runs the world, he calls them the cryptocracy, right? Carol Quigley and Anthony Sutton call them the Anglo-American establishment. Other people have other names. People call them the deep state, right?
Yeah, that's very common. And the The occult has very many names for it as well. For themselves, sometimes they call themselves the Brotherhood, the Great White Brotherhood. One whistleblower calls it the family. Another whistleblower or two calls them the order because of so many orders, the order of this and the order of that. So they have a lot of names for themselves as well. It's all the same thing, though.
I've heard the Olympians also.
That's a possibility for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, these are all very similar. Part of the reason that there is no they is because researchers keep finding different names for what I think wind up turning out to be the same groups or the same group of people.
Yes.
And that's what I've been. My next article is an analysis of the tree of life and the tree of death and how they, when they're arranged using something called Metatron's cube, it winds up looking like an org chart for a compartmentalized need to know network. So that's something that I'm working on right now. But in any case, what I think a good place maybe to start would just be where I started, which is what I was talking to you about the show, and then we could take it from different directions. But for people who have been watching the show for a while, they know that my wake up call happened on January 5th, 2021. When I was the official photographer for Stop the Steal. I was in Washington, D.C. For Donald Trump's speech on the ellipsis. And then we were supposed to walk peacefully up to the Capitol where there were a bunch of other speeches that were scheduled that day. And of course, none of that happened. But the day before the event happened, I was walking up, I want to say Connecticut. I can't remember what, Pennsylvania, some state name street. And I walked by this building that is now called the Andrew Mellon Auditorium. And my assistant at the time, Pat Moyse, who happened to be a specialist in the occult and Kabbalah and things like that, he pointed up to the pediment of this building and he said, "Oh, look, there's Baphomet." And I looked, I'm in Washington, D.C. This is federal government building. Like, what is this? And I look up at the top and I go, "What do you mean Baphomet?" And he goes, "Look, it's a dude with boobs." And I said, "I think that's supposed to be Columbia, the patron goddess of the United States of America." At which point I'm scratching my head going, why does the United States have a patron goddess?
Yep.
And the more that I looked at it, and he pointed out some interesting architecture on the entrances and the exits of the building. He said, "Boy, I bet that building's got some weird basements." And it turns out that this building is the building where NATO was founded, where NATO had their 25th, 50th, and lately their 75th anniversary. And the inside of the building looks very much like a Masonic temple.
Color me not surprised.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, and he pointed out to me that all of the other there's all kinds of naked figures in all of this art, and this is the only naked figure that has a towel over their lap, because he said that this is the occulted part. They're hiding in plain sight what they don't want you to know, which is that this figure that from the belly button up sort of looks like a woman with linebacker shoulders. That there's something hiding underneath the towel. And then as we walked down the street, and he asked me, I said, "Well, how do you know that's a hermaphrodite?" And he said, "Well, look," and he pointed to the building next door, and he said, "Look, there's Hermes." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "And there's Aphrodite." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "When you get Hermes and Aphrodite, you get hermaphrodite." He said, "So that's a wink." What Michael Hoffman would call a truth or consequences reveal. That is, if you don't see the truth, you get the consequences. So that's the Hoffman approach. And then I walked down the street, and then here was this figure again. And this is sitting in front of the United States of America National Archives, the steps. This is on the left side of the steps going into the United States National Archives. And I looked at this statue, and I thought, okay, it's a hermaphrodite or a trans person in 2025 parlance, and they're holding a baby in a sheaf of wheat, and in the other side there's an amphora with a snake above it, and then below that is this inscription which says, "The heritage of the past is the seed that brings forth the harvest of the future." And I was reading this to you before the show started, and you knew what this was immediately. So do you want to talk to me about, or talk to our audience about what this actually means?
So the heritage of the past is talking about the bloodlines of the occult. The seed is the seed of Cain, which by their representation is the spawn of evil, essentially Lucifer's people, and their offspring. And the heritage of the future means that they will continue to birth children that have these bloodlines of the occult, until they bring forth the Antichrist, who will then rule the world, theoretically, and take over heaven and dethrone God, the God of the Judeo-Christian God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and take over heaven, essentially. That's supposedly what Lucifer wants to do, is not to just rule on earth, but to also take over the heavens and dethrone God and dethrone Jesus, and basically rule the universe, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is on a United States government.
Yeah. So what I study is, for the past 5 years, I've studied whistleblower reveals, and I've looked into maybe 75 different whistleblowers on the occult, people who have come out of the occult, which is not easy to do. It's pretty rare, and speaking out hasn't been something that many have done in the past, but a few have snuck out recently. And so I've collected their testimonies. I'm kind of a memoirist in a way, but also a researcher on the subjects involved in the occult, because I really didn't understand a single thing when I started this out. But what I did understand is that the world was really in bad shape, and I had no clue why. And I didn't know why the jobs that I were at were kind of tanking into this strange LGBTQ morass, essentially, and why people were turning pretty instantaneously on their own values, and suddenly they were adopting the values of the world, I guess. And so I had been asking questions for about 5 years when I came across my first whistleblower on Sarah Westall's channel, I think, on BitChute. And I just thought, man, if this is true, which I wasn't so confident that it was at that point, if this is true, this answers absolutely everything, every question I've ever had about why the world is in such a bad state. And a lot of Protestants in the United States are not taught that Lucifer is real. In fact, it's all kind of mythology. All the Old Testament dudes and dudesses are just myths, and they weren't really people, and they didn't really exist, and there was no war in heaven, and Lucifer didn't fall, and let's just kind of ignore all that because it's uncomfortable, and we can just go to the New Testament and focus on that. But if you don't understand the Old Testament, then you're never going to understand the occult. And if you don't understand the occult, you will not understand the United States, because these buildings, they are temples. That building is a temple of worship for people in the occult, and it was built for people in the occult. And all of these statues and the sayings and the triangular, if you go back to the triangular top on that building, that triangle indicates that it's a house of worship. So, and the columns and the colonnade at the bottom, that series of columns, has meaning. The toppers on those columns have meaning. The basis, and this is all within the occult. And by occult, I don't mean just like hidden stuff. I mean, the dictionary definition of occult is people who practice the art of magic. So we're talking necromancy or alchemy or sex magic, or doing rituals, cannibalism, whatever it is they may be mired in. These are people doing most of the rest of us would consider to be pretty darn awful things. But one of the things they have that's enormous are architects, and the architects design the buildings as coded signs to other people in the occult so that they know what's offered. So there's an offering at this building of things that they can get there, things that will happen there. And you said it looked like the interior of a Masonic temple. And that's not surprising to me because probably there are similar rituals that would be done there. And of course, all of this would happen during the off hours. So, it's not going to be while people are present during the day.
You
But
can
yeah,
also have
it's,
weddings there.
well,
They have a web.
that's great.
They have a website. You can rent the
How
place out
lovely.
for a week.
And a lot of this magic has to do with energy and energy shifting. So they want the people there during the day. They want the wedding parties there during the day, I would imagine, because they can draw energy off of them. Just like if you go to Disneyland, there's a giant underground underneath Disneyland where the occult programs people, like a lot of the stars of the pop industry, the Miley Cyruses or the Taylor Swifts, or the young people like that. And they draw the energy from the people that go to Disneyland. So it's an energy siphoning. You've heard of ley lines. Those are the energy routes around and across the planet. And they pull this energy off of human beings and send it to wherever they need it to go to do rituals, to open spiritual gates, to get the demons or the spirits to give them what they want. There's a trade-off between humans and demons. So all of this requires energy or input of some sort, whether it's a ritual sacrifice, etc. But that building there, that triangular header, topper, whatever you want to call
Pediment.
pediment is, and I was not an architecture major, but that indicates that is a place where rituals will be done and cannibalism will happen, and there may be some kind of transport in and out that's allowed, and all of this will happen for people in the know. They can look at this architecture and they know a lot more than I do about what it all means. But yeah, that's
One of the things that I've suggested people do. I haven't had time to do it, but I come from a location-based entertainment background where we actually built stuff. I've worked with many Disney Imagineers, people who have built theme parks and roller coasters and things like that for Disney. And one of the things that I think when I look at a building like this is that there were blueprints, there was a contract, there was a request for proposal when this building was put up. And my guess is that all of the documentation, a lot of times in a building like this, the documentation is actually written into the notes in the blueprints. So to me, it would be very interesting to find out who specified that this was the art that was going to go on the top of this building. Because like you said, buildings like this don't accidentally happen. Like
right.
None of this art is accidental. One of the things that I find interesting about it, though, I'll bring up a closer view on someone here, is that none of this is marble. Like if you go and you look at similar things in Rome, they're marble. These things all seem to be cast concrete, or maybe it's limestone. But it's not marble. And what that tells me is that it was only meant to last for a few hundred years.
Well, I think that's because America, in occult parlance, America is actually called the New Babylon. And it's called the New Babylon because, well, for a variety of different reasons, but this is kind of if you follow the New Testament, if you follow the book of Revelation, if you understand that the occult wants to bring out and raise up their Antichrist, that's kind of the time that we're in right now. So I don't think they had too many more plans beyond a few hundred years because they expected this to happen. And I don't know exactly what they expect out of after the Antichrist comes to the stage, theoretically, if he does, if their plans come to fruition. But I think they expect a lot of destruction, a lot of human demise, a lot of death, a lot of violence, and maybe they don't intend these buildings to last too much longer. They're certainly not going to be around for thousands of years, I don't think, in their mind.
Yeah, I mean, like they're not constructed. I read Inside the Third Reich, 40 years ago, that was written by Albert Speer, And his contention in that book, which is almost scarier than the other alternatives, is that Adolf Hitler's major motivation for starting World War II, as far as Albert Speer was concerned, was to get enough resources to build a city that would rival Rome for its ability to last 1,000 years, and that they needed all of this marble from Italy, and they needed all of this labor from Eastern Europe to be able to build this big city. And then you look at this stuff in Washington, D.C., that was, I think this was contracted under Herbert Hoover, and it was revealed or unveiled or premiered under FDR. But you can see the lines and how this is kind of molded and put together. This is not your Roman. This is not David in Florence. You know, it's this is a very industrial kind of formulation of the way that you put a piece of sculpture together. I had one question for you though, and to your point about the architects. I'm trying to get my slides to. Here we go. This is the front of the United States Supreme Court, and the figure in the there's a wider shot, and then I'll move in. I'm getting a little delay in the way that this slide thing is working. The figure is called, that's holding justice, is called contemplation of justice. And it has no official name outside of that. And the documentation on Wikipedia and the public facing records for this statue are that it was inspired by the sculptor. Well, having worked, like I said, having worked at with a bunch of Disney Imagineers, I know that the sculptor does not work. The sculptor works for the architect, not the other way around.
Yeah, right.
Right. So it's not the sculptor who's saying, I'm going to put this statue in front of the Supreme Court. It's the architect who's saying, we need a statue of this in front of the Supreme Court. So do you have an interpretation, or do you have any guess about what, I mean, to me, just knowing what I know about Greek or Roman mythology, this is like Hera. Is it like the senior woman goddess who's holding?
Yeah, senior woman goddess would be my guess. But let me go back a second. So, and I'm going to break some people's hearts here with regards to the United States and how much we want to love her, but how much she was built from the ground up by these occultists. And so pretty much everything, all these symbols are in dedication to something other than we would imagine. But I wrote a post in the beginning of this year called 3 Ladies and a Goddess, based on reveals from a really prominent high up level whistleblower who revealed that some of the top level people in the occult in the United States, inside the group called the Brotherhood, have nicknames. And some of their nicknames are Lady Freedom, Lady Justice, and Lady Liberty. And so all of these individuals, Lady Freedom, Lady Justice, and Lady Liberty, are dedicated to high-level female witches that run the occult in the United States. And so those are their kind of their nicknames. And they, so all of these statues.
So it's justice, liberty, and freedom.
Right, justice, liberty, and freedom. And then there's the goddess Sophia is another one, which is wisdom. Let me see if I know what the date of that article is. It was the 10th of January of this year.
All right.
I'm going to copy the link. I'll post it in the
private chat,
Substack chat, or private chat, wherever you want me to put it.
All right.
I don't know where. Okay, here we go. Nope, that's the wrong link. Sorry. Sometimes my drafts don't give me the right links. Here we go. Put it in here. There we go. So that's on my blog, which is a subscription blog, unfortunately. A lot of the occult doesn't really like this stuff to go out. So in order to be a little more free with what I can write, I put it behind a small paywall. It's $26 a year. And that gets you 60 articles and about 1,500 references and a bunch of other stuff. But so these high-level witches, these are their nicknames and their personas. And so all these statues are directly linked. So when you think of the Lady Liberty, the Statue of Liberty, that's a statue that's dedicated to the occult. It was given by France, the occultists in France, to the occultists in the United States. It was probably a transfer of a contract from France to the United States. The occult has a lot of contracts with principalities and demons, and they have contracts for all sorts of things. Anything you can think of, pretty much they've made a contract with. So I would guess, if I had to guess, that the woman in the chair is probably one of the higher up female principalities, and my guess would be Ashtaroth. And Ashtaroth also goes by Lilith and Jezebel and the Queen of Heaven and the Queen of the Dead and a whole bunch of other names, Isis, Diana, all of the different regional names for certain goddesses sort of merge into one individual. Yep, that's the article.
All right. And
So-
and this is supposedly the secretary of the studio. The model who is painted here
Right.
was the secretary. I can't remember what the name of the Columbia studio chief's
Studios.
name was. He had a terrible reputation, like a Harvey Weinstein-like reputation.
Mhm.
And this woman was apparently his secretary, and he sent her over one day, and he didn't pay her to use her image. That was the story. But she's got the purple. She's got the purple of Tyre on, right?
Mm-hmm. Purple can be an interesting color in the occult. It's
Right
kind of
there.
a high level color. Mm-hmm.
Did I
She's
lose
also
you?
holding up the torch. And
Did
the
I
torch-
lose me? Better hang on. Let me check my audio. Yep, I lost me.
Can
Am
you
I
hear me
back?
now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, I'm going to dip out and dip back in.
Okay.
This is an ongoing problem I have. Remove.
Glad you're all here, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have, you have trolls and stuff.
Mhm.
I have this ongoing issue where I've got state of the art everything here, and halfway through the show every week, my audio cuts out, and then I have to jump out of the studio and then jump back in. And it's people who follow me have gotten used to it, but I can pick it up now and bring us back to where we were. I apologize.
No problem.
So yeah, three ladies and a goddess. So your assumption about that figure holding justice, holding it's justice, liberty, and freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. My guess is that it's a representation for a high level demonic entity like Ashtaroth. I could be wrong, but that would be my guess based on information I know. If I could dig a little bit more into it and probably figure out a little bit more, but that would be my guess. All of these, like Baphomet, so the hermaphrodite demon Baphomet is also a high level. We'll call him a principality. Demon general sometimes is what he's referred to as. Lucifer seems to organize his organization like the U.S. military. So there are a lot of low-level troops, and then there are low-level commanders and mid-level and majors and generals and commanding generals and five-star generals. And so the five-star generals at the top would be considered in entities like Ashtaroth, Leviathan, Baphomet, Moloch, Thoth, things like that. Ashtaroth is often in the center of a lot of different activities. She's present in great quantity, in great number, of figures, etc. In fact, I mean, even the Catholic Church, the figure of Mary, and I apologize if you're Catholic and listening to this and I'm ruining your faith, but the figure of Mary is also known as the Queen of Heaven, and that is a representation also of a demonic principality. The Catholic Church is unfortunately mired in a lot of the occult, especially at the high end. Of course, not with the parishioners. They are in the ranks, and they don't know, and that's part of what the occult does. I think it's the language as well. So the language and the many different organizations that it infiltrates and makes its way into, and it likes to surround itself with people who have no clue what's going on. And then the occultists rise in the ranks, and they become the presidents and the vice presidents and the CFOs and the CEOs and the high level people. And then at the bottom, the workers are people who are clueless. So they have plausible deniability because the majority of the organization is not occultic, not practicing occultists, but the tops of these organizations are, I liken it in one of my articles a long time ago to a Tootsie Pop, so they surround themselves with the people who make the Tootsie Pop look great and look lovely, but in the center is that chewy Tootsie Roll candy, and that's where the occult hides, surrounded by people who are not, gives them plausible deniability, and it kind of hides them away from public view. And they've done this in virtually every organization I can think of, and every like category. There's one high level whistleblower who says that the occult basically wants to take over, and pretty much has at this point taken over 6 major areas: the media, the banking system, the educational system, local and federal government, the sciences, and the churches. And that's their goal, is to take over all of them:
Media, banking, education,
government,
right?
science, and churches. And that last one might not make much sense, but Lucifer and his people are very much anti-Christianity. Christianity's been described as one of the only things that can actually thwart them and take them down. So they want to get into the Christian churches and subvert them and bastardize them, for lack of a better word, and because then they aren't as much of a problem for them.
Well, it's interesting that you said 6, and that's I sent you a chart. I'm going to try to figure out where I put it so that I could put it up on the screen. But I sent you a chart that goes with a story that I'm writing right now, and a lot of the things that I've been writing lately, I've been writing as thought experiments, because based on the way that I approach things, which is to use this kind of Parmenides framed, what do I know is true, and then how can I apply what I know is true to what I am experiencing. So, for example, I'm reasonably confident that I know that when people go into the initiatory, like the Blue Lodge level of Freemasonry, they get taught basic geometry with a compass and a straight edge. And they're taught how to create Platonic solids, how to draw them, with a compass and a piece of paper. And eventually they're the pinnacle of their exercises with the compass and the straight edge is to create something called Metatron's cube. Metatron is a prophet who's only mentioned twice in the Bible, I believe, and it's very kind of minimal mention. Metatron's cube is unique because you can find all of the Platonic solids inside the drawing of Metatron's cube. Where it gets interesting is that if you take the tree of life or the tree of death from Kabbalah, and the people who are in this organization refer to themselves as being in a cabal, as in from Kabbalah. If you take 6 of these trees of life, and that's why I was picking up on this number 6, then you can illustrate something that looks very much like a command and control structure for a cell-based, need-to-know, compartmentalized intelligence network that has 6 divisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm looking at media, banking, education, government, science, and church, I'm thinking, you know, my spidey senses are going, because I don't know, again, I'm going from the geometry to and I'm looking at Kabbalah, and I am discounting. I don't know anything about Kabbalah. I know about this chart, right? This
Right.
tree of life chart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got all these labels that are associated with these circles that they call Sephiroth. And the Sephiroth are connected with what they call paths. Okay. And there's all of this lore. There's, you know, I think there's the Zohar's got 10,000 pages or something of explanation about what these Sephiroths mean and, you know, what the paths mean. I don't know any of that. I'm just looking at the I could probably bring it up. I'm just looking at what it visually looks like, because I'm, you know, I'm a visual guy. I can bring this up. Hang on a second. Image file. I think it's on my desktop. Here we go.
I don't know a whole lot about Kabbalah, but I do know that one whistleblower has listed it as one of the major 5 divisions of the Brotherhood. So it's a definite occultic practice, and I was reading up on it because it's not something I've delved into in a lot of depth, but it's also one of the deeper levels of study of the Torah. Apparently, there's 5 levels of study of the
I
Torah.
think of the Talmud.
Is it Talmud? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think
like
it's
I said,
the Torah.
I'm not.
Because I think the Torah worshippers don't like this. In that it's not. They consider this a heresy.
Mm.
And that's where it gets interesting, because this was, I think, developed by Jews in Venice and then taken to England by John Dee. And this is where the Cabal was born. And according to Robert Frederick, John Dee and, Francis Bacon, I call Francis Bacon the executive producer. John Dee is like the producer who's in charge of encryption and occult studies. And then Giordano Bruno is in charge of memory studies, teaching people how to memorize things. But if you think of it like again, I come from Hollywood. I look at it like it's Disney, right? Francis Bacon is Walt Disney, right? And he's got directors and producers and writers and all these people working for him. So John Dee is working for him. Giordano Bruno is working for him. They're all working. They've got this project called Shakespeare. They've got this project called the King James Bible. They've got, you know, all these different, and they've got this Cabal project. So you can try to figure out you can try to learn how to read Hebrew, and then you can try to learn what all of these words mean, and then learn what the paths are connecting to each other. For this article that I'm working on right now, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going, okay, there's 10 circles. Okay. And they're connected by paths in certain ways. And then I will attempt to find the other, it's probably in my mail because I send it to you. What I found out from watching this other channel, this guy Robert Edward Grant, who's a very interesting fellow. I'm going to look at my sent mail, because then I can find the document that I sent you. Peter, you're not very organized. I'm not finding it. I'll find it some other place. Anyway, I'll keep talking. This isn't good show business. Anyway, on the bottom of this chart here, you see Malkuth and you see Lilith. So if you learn how to draw Metatron's cube, I found out from this guy Robert Edward Grant that these trees overlay Metatron's cube perfectly. If you overlay, so assume that you overlay Malkuth with Lilith, which are the 2 dots on the bottom. They call them Sephiroth. And then if you align, they're right next to each other, Netzach with Samael, then this thing will be arranged at a 60-degree angle, and 60 goes into 366 times. And so you can put 6 of these trees together in what looks like an org chart. And in the center dot, you've got the command and control structure, which I can contend is the Doge.
So
and
it
go
looks
on.
kind of like a snowflake, what you're describing.
Yes,
When you get all of them. Yeah.
it does look like a snowflake. And let me see if I could just find this other document. Book covers, Cabal references. Where did I put it? I'm just not that.
You did email it to me, so it's in
I found it.
in the
I found
email,
it.
yeah.
I found it. Yes, I found it. All right, here we go. Here's what happens when you put them all together, and this will be in my next article. Okay, when you put them all together, you'll see that you've got 13 stars arranged in the middle that completely match the iconography that's above the eagle's head in the Great Seal of the United States of America. So they're blue and pink, and then it says Doge in the middle. But this is the exact formation of the 13 stars that are in the that are encoded into the symbol above the eagle of the United States of America. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, this looks more like an org chart to me than it looks like a some kind of a mystical thing. So I'm not there's probably all kinds of magic involved here, but I'm just looking at it from a practical security standpoint. So what we know about the Doge from the Serene Republic of Venice is that the Doge is he is anointed with that job. That is, it's not something that you build yourself up to being in a power position. Well, you may be building yourself up politically, but you're appointed by the sixth. In my ontology here, the Doge is appointed by the six most powerful oligarchs in the world, who may each be representing media, banking, education, government, science, and church. Okay.
Yeah. Another way to look at it is where that Doge symbol is right now, is where Lilith was in the two trees, or one of the trees. And Lilith is another name for Ashtaroth again, so another demonic principality. And so if Lilith is often, or Ashtaroth is often in the center of the org charts for the occult. She resides in the middle, whether that's a Christian cross that you're overlaying with the names of the principalities, or this if you put them out in the
and that represents an inversion, which is another telltale sign of the occultists, that they like to invert things, right?
Yes. Yeah,
so Lilith is on the bottom of the tree of death, but Lilith is in the center power position in this configuration.
I haven't seen that configuration anywhere else, so that's an interesting one. It's a new one on me. I would imagine it might have some meaning to someone somewhere, but I don't know what it is personally.
Well, what I was thinking about when I was looking at this is that if each one of these paths is a person. That is, one of the things that Cecil Rhodes talks about in his Last Will and Testament, and Anthony Sutton and Carol Quigley point out in their books, is that Rhodes wanted to set up, he called it Jesuit-like. Now, when I read between the lines on Rhodes and he says Jesuit-like, I'm thinking, okay, oath of loyalty, need to know basis, cellular structure. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And each one of the lines in this chart represents a communication line between the groups. But that communication line is a person. So,
well, in the original structure, the Tree of Life or the Tree of Death, those circles can be represented by a number of different things. One of them are the principalities. So each one of them would represent a demonic command and control center for that. In this kind of structure, I don't know if they would just be repeated 6 times, or if they would be different, or I'm not sure. So
here's what I was thinking, again, from a security and a communication standpoint. If if the oligarch in the 10 o'clock position wanted to talk to the oligarch in the 2 o'clock position, okay, he wouldn't talk to him directly. He would talk to him through the oligarch in the 12 noon position. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you're trying to maintain operational security and you don't want people to know what your command and control structure is, then you would adopt a system like this to be able to manage your communications in a secure way. And by going through, again, this is all finger in the air. I'm guessing. No, but this is just based on my analysis of geometry and looking at these things and kind of spitballing that if you wanted to create a command and control structure that was, and you taught everybody geometry so that they could learn how to draw Metatron's cube, and then you taught them how to overlay the tree of life and the tree of death on top of Metatron's cube, then you would have a way of teaching people how to memorize the command and control structure of what I'm calling the cabal. At which point they would know where they were in the organization, and then they would know who they needed to go talk to in order to affect any kind of coordination with the other groups. That's kind of my thesis that I'm working on.
I don't know. So I'm going to throw a wrench in your works here and say I'm
Go
not
for it.
sure. I'm not sure the occult organizes itself in such a structured fashion, and I'm pretty sure that they operate on a need to know basis. So I'm not sure that they would even pass out an entire org chart to most of the people. I think only the individuals at the very top have a handle on pretty much everything, and then it's splintered into so many factions and so many parts. You know, everything from Freemasonry to Rosicrucians to Knights Templar to Order of the Phoenix to the Shriners to hospitals to CPS. It's vast and extensive and lots of little groups. But what I see anyway is that they really don't want one hand to know what the other hand's doing. They don't want to let on too much, and it's a need to know basis only. And you may not even know. I mean, they aren't going to tell each other what their actual names are. They'll have ritual names, so it'll be hard to identify them if they're out and about and in regular life. You bump into each other and you have no idea. You know them, but you don't know who they are because you don't know their name. So I'm not sure they would do that. It's an interesting idea. I think you should pursue it. I just don't know if, at least from what I know about them, that they would ever set up something like that and give it out as a.
I'm not saying that they would.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they would. I mean, one of the things that I think that is incumbent in the way that if you read Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike is that they dole out information by degree. So my guess,
very much so.
I'm guessing this is a top level idea.
Yeah, I think you're accurate in that. If something like this exists and you're
if you're on the David
mapping it out.
Rockefeller level, you know this.
Yeah.
If you're on the George Soros level, you know this. What was I going to say? I can't remember now. Anyway, so this is just an idea that I'm playing around with. Again, I'm not sure that I've got this completely dialed in, but one of the things that I noticed also, and I haven't shared this with you before, but people who follow my channel know this, is that from 2014 to 2018, I had a business partner that I was doing journalism startups with who turned out to be a spook. He turned out to be an intelligence asset of some kind. He called me up one day after we had been in business for 4 years, and he tried to sell me on the idea that he bought $20 million worth of Bitcoin when he was drunk and gambling in college, and he forgot. And that he no longer was going to be in business with me anymore, and that he was going to, I said, well, you can fund all of the things that we're working on now. And he goes, no, I'm going off. I'm going to become an investor in biotech. So we did journalism for 4 years, and then he found $20 million, and he went off and became an investor in biotech. And it took me a while of head scratching and kind of connecting the dots to figure out, oh, he was a spook, and oh, this is all CIA stuff that we've been doing. And then I started to look at this stuff, and it started to kind of click with me a little bit. So that's part of my motivation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the CIA is definitely one of their branches, for lack of a better term, but they certainly have, well, they've got their arms in pretty much every three-letter agency out there. It's really their world. It's really their country. We just live here and think we're free, but the more I look into it, the more I realize that we're not, unless we wake up and open our eyes. It's hard to study this kind of stuff. This isn't a subject that I have a great love for, or I would have, gone to school for, or done a degree in, or anything like that. But the more I study it, the more I understand what it is I'm looking at around me, and how I can make different choices, and how I can better position myself in life so that I don't fall into their traps, because they set a lot of them, especially verbally these days. They set a lot of the NLP type traps for us. I mean, we went through one of those with the COVID scam.
We sure did.
And they're if you want to keep grandma safe, you'll take the jab, which was just a ploy, essentially.
Right. I wrote a whole article about it, which I will show you. And in fact, before we started the show, you said that you wanted to know a little bit more about NLP, and I told you that I thought that I could teach you a little bit of NLP very quickly, and I can do that. So let me.
I see a lot of people that I recognize in the live chat. So thanks everybody for being here. And I think that we will learn quite a bit about it. This is not something I know too much about, but it's interesting.
Okay. So I wrote, let me see if I can, for some reason, my computer is acting very slow.
I have no internet, I guess.
You have no internet?
Seems like it.
It's this, it's this, I'm afraid to set the DNS. I had to add a DNS setting. I'm using this DNS device, and I think it's giving us trouble, but I'm not going to change anything because I'm afraid. Anyway, let me add this to the stage if I can. Before presenting, remove any other media. Okay, I've got to remove. Let me remove this, and remove this, and remove this, and then I can add this. There, it worked. Okay, so I wrote this article called "A User's Guide to Neurolinguistic Defense." So I'll try to make this really short for people. I'll try to make it short enough for the people who already know this, and long enough for people who don't know this. So NLP is based on fundamentally on something that Noam Chomsky wrote about in the 1950s. He wrote his doctoral dissertation on something that he calls the deep structure of memory. And the idea of the deep structure of memory is that we have an abstract layer of language. He calls it, Chomsky, being the materialist that he is, wants to believe that it's in some organ in our brain that we haven't discovered yet. I can go off on a tangent about that, but I won't. But basically we have this deep structure. All right. And we use that in order to create language, to make sentences, which is why you can say the cat chased the mouse, or the mouse was chased by the cat, and it's all coming from the same deep structure in our consciousness. And what the guys who invented NLP figured out is that this deep structure is big. It's, for example, if I asked you to describe in the greatest amount of detail necessary all of the things that you did from the time that you first opened your eyes this morning until you got onto this podcast with me, you probably have the ability to detail things out with enough specificity to take longer to explain it than it took you to live it, because we have a lot of stuff in our deep structure. And in order to be able to speak, in order for me right now to be able to communicate with you, I have to take all of the things that are in my deep structure, and I have to compress them into the language that is coming out of my mouth right now, into the microphone, out of the speakers, into your ears, and into your consciousness. Okay. And the methods that I use for compressing all of that information is deletion, distortion, and generalization. So I'm deleting, distorting, and generalizing right now when I'm talking to you, because in order to communicate, we are all deleting, distorting, and generalizing all the time. And all is something called a universal quantifier. And it's something that you can listen for when people are speaking, because in most cases, when people are using universal quantifiers, it's not true. So if I was to say to you, and I wrote in this article, if I was to say to you, all women are fickle, you wouldn't actually have to have any domain understanding of what a woman is, or you wouldn't actually have to have any domain understanding of what fickle means to come back with the question, all of them? That is, by virtue of the fact that the universal quantifier was used, okay, you've created an opening by which a person, can you guys hear the dog barking in the background? Because I can probably filter that out.
A little bit.
Okay, let me get rid of the dog. Reduce my background noise. The dog should be gone. I hope the dog is gone. Anyway, by virtue of the fact that you can listen, so universal quantifier is a pattern, right? And a universal quantifier is a word like any, all, always, never. It's a word that takes a needle and it pins the idea all the way over onto one level or the other. Okay, and so and the reason I always like to start off with universal quantifiers is because they are the simplest pattern to recognize, because they usually involve one word, right? So there's 10 basic patterns that define all of the deletions, distortions, and generalizations. They're called and the one that is the two patterns that were, I'm sorry, this dog is just driving me crazy, and I want to get mad at his owner. The two patterns that are that what you used, say you used the COVID experience, safe and effective. Safe and effective are only 3 words, but in 3 words, they've combined 2 patterns, and the 2 patterns are a cause effect and a complex equivalence. Effective means that if you take the jab, that you will be protected from the disease and you won't pass it on to others. Safe means that there won't be, that's a cause effect. Safe means that safe and effective. I'm confusing myself now. Safe and effective combined cause effect and complex equivalency into 3 words. Okay. And what people who practice neurolinguistic programming do is that they actively listen. Now, this has led me into the New Testament. Okay. Because when I was learning all of this stuff, my wife and I read the Bible every day, every morning. Mm-hmm. And what I started to notice when I started learning NLP is that the method, if you go in and you read the red letter Bible, okay, and you look at the method that Jesus is using linguistically in the conversations that he's having, he's actively reframing people's belief systems, usually using interrogative. Jesus largely asks questions. And what NLP is about asking people, it's about 2 things. It's about building rapport, because you can't really change somebody's belief system if you don't have rapport with them. And then the second thing is interrogatory reframing. And what I mean by that is that instead of telling people what to know, you're asking them questions that lead them into the belief system that you want them to wind up in. And so the difference between you and my having a casual conversation with you and my acting like a hypnotist and trying to get you to believe something would be intent. Mm-hmm. If I wanted to move you in a direction, I would build rapport. and then I would ask you questions that would move you into the direction that I wanted you to go in. Those questions that I ask you would be based on my analysis of your words to determine whether or not you're deleting, distorting, or generalizing when you're talking to me. So if you understand, and again, you can do this when you're reading, you can do it in social media. If you understand that we are always deleting, distorting, and generalizing whenever we're communicating. So it doesn't matter whether or not you're having a conversation with somebody or you're reading a social media post, okay, or reading a blog post, okay. There's always a deletion. There's always something being left out. There's always a distortion. There's always something that's been modified a little bit in order to get people to understand it better. Or there's always been there are always generalizations where you're taking something that's very specific and you're kind of casting a broad net. There's specific words that you can use in order to be able to figure those things out. And then, like I said, what you can do is you can form questions. There's another therapist, a guy named Robert Dilts, who discovered that the cause-effect complex equivalency was so ubiquitous that there is actually 14 programmatic responses that you can make to any statement that's made using a cause-effect complex equivalency. And he's written 2 books on it. They're called Sleight of Mouth. So Sleight of Mouth, Volume 1 came out 25 years ago. Sleight of Mouth 2 came out, I think, about 18 months ago. But both of those books are very good at being able to identify the stuff. And the reason that it's important when you're doing research is, for example, Courtney Turner is a friend of mine, and she was talking about this guy who wrote a book on, I'm trying to remember what it was about, game theory. And it's called The Unlimited Game, I believe. I don't remember the guy's name, but I've taken a look. I haven't read the whole book, but I've taken a look at John von Neumann's book on game theory. I grew up as a RAND kid. My mother worked at RAND. My aunt worked at RAND. I have other relatives who worked at RAND. My high school algebra teacher was a RAND mathematician. My next door neighbor was a RAND mathematician who I used to play games with when I was a kid. So, I was kind of like in that whole kind of game theory space. And so I kind of know something about game theory, a lot actually. And I started to read the preface to this book. And the entire preface of the book was one entire cause-effect complex equivalency. And so I put the book down because I thought I'm not going to spend 18 hours of my life going and reading this book when it's based on a cause-effect complex equivalency. Because the purpose, I think, of many of these books, again, getting back to the education being one of the 6 components, is that if you can effectively replace thinking with knowing, then you can get a bunch of people to think that they're, or to know that how smart they are, who are not ever actually thinking, if that makes any sense. And so I know I'm jumping around. I'm going to.
No, I think that's the entire. I was an educator for many years, and that's, I think, the way that they have pushed all of education these days is far away from thinking into knowing, but not having any basis for knowing other than what you were just told by somebody who may not have the credentials to tell you, or who may be stuffing something incorrect down your throat.
And grading people on what they know instead of their ability to think.
Yeah.
And so kind of, that winds up becoming the test for all of this. So neurolinguistic programming in a nutshell is, we all have something called a deep structure. We all delete, distort, and generalize when we're talking or writing. And that if you can learn how to spot the patterns that indicate deletion, that indicate distortion, that indicate generalization, that can allow you to form questions that will get deeper into the person's deep structure. As a defensive tool, though, What it can also allow you to do is recognize when people are trying to hypnotize you, because because you'll see the fingerprints of the hypnosis. For example, and I talk about this in this article and other articles, is that talking heads on television, again, getting back to the Tucker Carlson, Rachel Maddow comparison, and I've written about this several places. I can show you on my Substack. In order to build rapport, if you're on television, it's hard to build rapport because you're not in the same room with the people, right? You can't measure their respiration. You can't watch their eye movements to see whether or not they're paying attention to you. You can't do those things. And so what they do on television is that they use something called a yes ladder or a mere agreement frame. And what that means is that they will start off their monologues by saying a dozen things in a row that they know that the people who are in their audience already agree with. And this is not a new idea. Aristotle wrote about it in Rhetoric, right? He didn't call it the mere agreement frame, but that's what it is. And the psychological idea of that is that if you say something that a bunch of people agree with 10 or 12 times in a row, they're much more likely to believe whatever the thing is that you suggest when you get to the point where you're planting an idea in them. And so that's called a mere agreement frame or a yes ladder.
So let me ask you this. If let's say that you're watching a television show like that and they also introduce subliminal images, because one of the high level whistleblowers that I follow has talked about television and introducing subliminal pictures into TV, and she says they've been doing it ever since television began. She says they do it now on cell phones, and because cell phones are personalized, they can personalize these subliminal images and send them to people. Do you suppose that works hand in hand with so if they prime someone, for example, in a way that they would be more suggestible, do these subliminal images, are they going to have a bigger effect then? Is that why television's hypnotic, in other words?
There's a lot of reasons. Well, first of all, they call it television. So there's that.
Yeah, well.
I don't think that's an accident.
No.
But I think that these things reinforce each other. I don't think that any of them by themselves are that effective. But I think that when you add, there's an additive effect when you pile these things on top of each other. Let me see. I'm just.
They seem to do this. If I'm understanding you correctly, they seem to do this all the time. Politicians do it. I see university heads and departments do it. I'm starting to think of a sector of society that doesn't do it to some level. It seems pretty ubiquitous.
It is ubiquitous. And like I said, I don't think that it's new. I think that the only thing that makes NLP new is that the United States Army hired 2 psychologists, one ex-Special Forces intelligence guy, to figure out a way to train operators in the field how to do this. And so they went and they modeled. By the way, their first assistant in applying this stuff was Tony Robbins.
Right.
And his first assignment was, which I've got a video, which I show on my Substack, of Tony Robbins talking about this, was to change the United States America pistol training program to make U.S. operators more effective pistol shots. And so that was the first thing that Tony Robbins ever worked on, was teaching people how to use their murder weapons in a much more effective way.
Wow.
So,
yeah, he's an interesting character, definitely connected to a lot of occult activity from what I can tell. Who are the 2 military guys? Do you remember their names?
Well, one guy military. Yeah, I write about them. John Grinder is U.S. Army Special Forces captain, retired, and then Richard Bandler. And Richard Bandler famously, at one point, got into. It seems like there was like a love triangle with a drug dealer, and the drug dealer wound up dying, shot with a 357 Magnum, and Bandler was, as I understand the story, was charged with murder and was put on trial and did such a good job defending himself. This is the guy who's invented neurolinguistic programming that he was found not guilty and they released him. Wow. So, but I actually break down Rachel Madd. This is Rachel Maddow's famous speech where she was telling everyone.
That gets straight.
And
I got my shot. I did.
What I do in this video is that I actually break down every sentence so in the beginning, she's inducing agreement. So she's building rapport, right? So on the left side of the screen, I call out what she's doing. And then I play the video in real time so that you can kind of see all of this stuff. You could see the hypnosis happening.
Watch that. I think that hypnosis, I don't know. I think hypnosis is a goal, and also reframing or changing people's minds without them being aware of it is definitely a goal of the U.S. Army. I know that Colonel Michael Aquino was heavily involved in working. He wrote a book called Mind War, which is all about the psychological operations. I think that, and he, of course, is a very high-level occultist in the Brotherhood. So,
and he wrote that book with Paul Valley, who was Michael Flynn's commanding officer, I believe. Yeah.
Well, some would say that Flynn is also part of the club.
I hear you. I hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've been doing this to us for a really long time. I think it's one of the reasons I can't really watch television very easily, and I don't listen to video very well. But I haven't noticed it in some of the books that I've read. Maybe I've just avoided a lot of that. But I do know that there are some individuals that I follow who are supposedly survivor helpers, who are well versed in NLP, and I've often wondered if that was because they were trying to do something to them. What exactly, I don't know, but hypnotize them, I guess, would be one outcome. If you can hypnotize someone while you're interviewing them, that would be a definite skill you would be able to wield in a number of different ways, I would imagine.
Right. I mean, I think that, a lot of what Robert Cialdini teaches in his influence books, which are targeted at people who are doing sales, ostensibly, that's all hypnosis. And hypnosis is simply the ability to use conversational language. My understanding, or my analysis, is that hypnosis is the ability to use conversational language in order to change people's belief systems. And if you're doing that with intent, you're a hypnotist. And if you're doing it with good intent, like Jesus, you're trying to make somebody's life better. And if you're trying to do it for some other reason, like get them to give you more money or get a bigger car or to, buy more groceries, whatever it is that they're using it to do, then, we're not taught. The great thing about NLP is that if I could teach 8th graders how to memorize, I could teach 8th graders how to recognize all the 10 patterns, in a semester. Like, it's not something you do in a day, and it requires practice to kind of like pay attention to things. Yeah. I've just recently, I've been studying this for 4 years, and I've just recently they have kind of weird labels. So there's one thing called a unspecified modifier, unspecified verb. It's where you talk about how they're going to do something, but you don't know who they are. So unspecified verb. Barack Obama was selling hope and change. Hope for what? Change what? Okay. Yeah. It's an unspecified word. And the thing is about unspecified words is that they allow the audience to fill in their own belief systems. That's why I was MAGA, Make America Great. On January 6th, I was MAGA, Make America Great Again. But the problem is that I had my own definition of what a great America was.
Yeah.
And all 250,000 people there had a different definition for what they thought making America great again was, right? And so these are unspecified. And Eric Hoffer in the book The True Believer, talks about this stuff. But unspecified verbs are not something that you go around listening for. And I have a problem with the number of syllables in unspecified verbs. Like my brain goes to jello, but I know what they are now.
Right.
And when I can recognize them. So it's easier to recognize the patterns one at a time, which is why I try to start people off with universal quantifiers, because they're really simple.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome. And like I said, if you go and check out some of my articles, I think I've done a pretty good job of explaining it. All of these, I've been working on a book for 5 years, and these are all kind of like chapters in my book, work in progress. Why don't we? We've been going for an hour and 17 minutes now. Why don't we talk about your book and some of your stuff, so that people can learn more about you? I feel like I had you on this show and I've been talking for the last 20 minutes. So
that's okay. I kind of asked you to do that because I knew some people that are in my circle of friends and subscribers would be interested in that as well. It's something that I think we all should learn, because being able to recognize it is important.
I agree. And for any of those people who are listening right now, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat, because my wife Jessica is looking at the chat, and she'll put a Q in front of your question. And Q, you and I can disagree on what
Q.
On what we think Q is. Right?
Well, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the Committee of 300, because I noticed that you'd written about that in one of your articles, and some of your individuals might not be aware of the many numerous alternate names for the Committee of 300 and what it is as revealed by whistleblowers.
Well, let's talk about it.
So the Committee of 300 is named the Committee of 300, or was named it, because there's 300 seats. Mm-hmm. And these seats are held by elite members of the occult from around the world. And it's not 300 individuals, as it's been explained to me, but it is, people can rotate in and out of the seats, but there are a fixed number of seats. And it's one of the biggest and highest level gatherings of the occult. So you have to be a pretty high level individual to have a seat or rotate in and out of seats. So some of the people that have been named as individuals who hold seats have been George Soros, Barack Obama, some of the Rothschilds, Jacob Rothschild, who passed away, I think, last year or the year before, Beyonce, and other, Harry and Meghan. So these are prominent people, many of them, and some of them are not well known, and not all of them certainly have been talked about. And below that group, so it's an org chart, not like yours, but kind of like a military dissemination of information. So these people would be the generals, and they would give information to people below them, and that information would be disseminated by individuals out to, kind of the groups that do the work at the ground level. And a lot of the work comes in the form of drug running, gun running, child trafficking, human trafficking in general. These are kind of the businesses that the occult operates worldwide. So all this, governmental fight against drugs, the war on drugs and the war on, whatever. It's kind of stupid to me, because there's no war on it. They're actually involved in supporting it. They just like to make it seem like they're doing something against.
Well, it's a way for them to take our money and then use it for their own means.
Exactly.
In order to increase their business, like I call it goal stacking. The Pentagon will put money into DARPA. DARPA will develop a new technology. They'll leak it out to somebody who they again, and they were leaking all of these secrets to the Soviets during the Cold War. But they'll leak it to somebody in Silicon Valley, Mark Zuckerberg, or Bill Gates, who will take it public. They'll get founder shares under the table. They wind up getting shares in the billionaires' billions, and the money that was used to develop the technology in the first place came from the taxpayers.
Exactly. So, we get fleeced on multiple levels as taxpayers. And then they have their own foundations and philanthropies, and they ask us for donations in that, voluntary donations in that way. And that's one of the things I've stopped doing is donating anywhere, because I just don't know where that money's going or what the purpose of it is, and I don't want it to go for something.
You can donate down here, though. If you look down, below our things,
buy a coffee. That's right.
You can go to veronicaswift.blog and you can donate, or you can go to veronicaswiftblog.substack.com and you can donate, or you can go to thedukeproport.substack.com and you can donate. That's a better place to put your money, I think.
It really is. It's a better place. We do better things with it. So yeah, the whole money thing is here's one thing about the occult that most people probably don't realize is that they're required to do good deeds to compensate for bad deeds. So when you see individuals like Oprah put together a foundation to gather money for, the disaster in Hawaii, that is a good deed that balances out whatever nasty deeds she might be doing, or the people in her organization might be doing, allegedly, of course, at night. So there's a lot of infighting, and there's a lot of back and forth that goes on between the good deed doers and the people who are not doing such good deeds. So they fight amongst themselves, like the Rothschilds financing both sides of a war. That's often the thing that I think of when I think of the occult. It might look like they're fighting, but really it's all just one big group with little factions inside of it that they get mad at each other and go have a little mini war, and we all think it's real, but it's kind of insular. And
we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. That's where they I think the cover up is important for them. I can't remember what it was in what I read of yours that got me to thinking about cover lives, but that's another thing that's hard for a lot of people to understand, is that a lot of the occult activity is masked with a cover story. It's like the symbology on the outside of the buildings, or the sayings on the outside of the buildings, or the statues. There's always a cover story for it. In the Catholic Church, it's Mary, and you're praying to Mary, when at night that statue represents a demonic principality instead. So they have their Wikipedia, right? And it tells us what they want us to know. But in reality, there's a lot of things behind that. The symbols, that it means something to them, whereas to us, we're told it's something else. And so that's why it's hard to learn about this. And that's why I focused on whistleblowers and ex-occultists, because they seem to know the information that nobody else knows.
Okay, so let's talk about Q for a second, because on your website here, I'll bring it up here on the stage. It says Q is for Quetzalcoatl. I've seen this before, but you tell me how you came to this, and I'll tell you how I came to a different conclusion.
So everything that I do, I don't really have opinions about what I'm reading. Some of it's hard for me to believe in the beginning. Usually the more I dig into it, the more it makes sense, and the more I see that it's actually reality. So one whistleblower talks about Q and this phenomenon of Q as being integral to the Brotherhood. It's a Brotherhood operation. It's meant to suck up people's time, take everybody's energy, send you on a lot of wild goose chases. It's meant to look really good. They've got timestamps, and it seems like they can predict the future. Well, maybe they can, because they've got technology that allows them to look forward in time. A lot of the occult, a lot of technology that we have is essentially technology that I think, from what the whistleblowers have said, was given by the other realm, by the spirit world, by the demonic, if you want to say. They seem to have a lot of technology that they've passed along. If you think about the Montauk Project, if you're familiar with that, if that rings a bell.
Is
A lot
that
of the
Tesla?
no, that's
Yes.
out on Long Island. It was an operation that they used a lot of. It was connected to the Philadelphia experiment, the ship
Okay.
that they were trying to get to disappear, and they used a lot of radio frequencies and other frequencies, and they got the ship to disappear, but it also, in getting it to disappear, they discovered that frequency and masking. They were kind of trying to do a Harry Potter cloaking device activity on that ship, and the frequencies actually messed with time. So it took and space. So it took that ship to a different time and a different space, and that's kind of what they were trying to do with the Montauk Project at the end of Long Island, is take people to different times and different spaces, and they had computers and chairs and technology that it was reported was given to them by an alien race, alien as in demonic alien, and they have reportedly been able to send people back in time, forward in time,
Is
to
that
do things like kill somebody so that that moving forward in time, the events of the present day are different than they would have been.
right? Yeah, I'm wondering. Because my friend George Webb spent a lot of time in Long Island, and I think that there's a place called the Russian Retreat that's out there. That's actually sovereign Russian land that was given to the Soviet government by, I want to say, the Rockefellers.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And I think it's also very close to Renaissance Technology, which is Robert Mercer's quote unquote hedge fund. But okay, so let me so you, but Quetzalcoatl, what your article is on Quetzalcoatl. What is this Q is for Quetzalcoatl?
Q is for Quetzalcoatl. Well, let me go to the article. Maybe I can read you a bit. So, because I don't think you're logged in, so you can't see the.
Yeah, let me
article.
while you're doing that, I'll stretch for you and I'll tell you where I'm coming from on Q, and that is I read this book, or I read parts of this book because you were talking about freedom, and one of this book makes the argument, and again, I think that Oxford and Cambridge are. I think that we're involved in something that I refer to as an epistemological war. And that is, it's the war on how we actually know what we know at all. And this book, The Greek Slogan of Freedom and Early Roman Politics in Greece, is a Oxford publication. And it seems like Oxford and Cambridge are the Pentagon of epistemological warfare. So if you actually want to know what's really happening in the world, a lot of times the only place you can go find out is in Oxford or Cambridge. And so in this book, Dmitriev, who's the guy who wrote the book, he's talking about Fabius Maximus, and so we're like 164 BC, and Fabius Maximus is one of the guys who famously the Fabian Society have named their think tank, club, planning organization, roundtable after, and he's famous for kind of slow attrition. That's kind of what he's famous for, but it turns out that he's also famous for something else, which is epistemological warfare. And this book is all about how the Romans, the Greeks had two words that they used for freedom: eleutheria, which means freedom, and autonomia, which means self-determination. And the Romans replaced it with a Latin word, liberty. And liberty doesn't mean freedom. And most Americans, if this is a great test, if you're going to a party, or if you're going to Thanksgiving in November, to ask people at the table if they can tell you the difference between the word liberty and the word freedom. Because the word liberty is freedom that's bestowed on you by somebody with power over you. That is, slaves that were freed, the slaves that were given their freedom in the Roman Republic were given liberty. a captain that pulls his ship into harbor who wants to let the crew go on shore for a day, he gives them liberty. So liberty is something that's bestowed on you, and it can be taken away.
Right.
And that's kind of the big lesson that I pulled out of reading this book. But on a side note, I was reading some letters that are quoted in this book by Fabius Maximus, letters that he was writing to other people in the Roman Republic, and he signs his name Q. And I was thinking, well, isn't that convenient that the Fabian Society, that is basically part and parcel to the epistemological war that's been going on, at least against English-speaking people for the last 200 years, that their namesake signs all of his letters Q. So that was when I read that, I thought, okay, that's where Q comes from.
I would posit that that liberty comes from the light side of the system. So there's two factions, two distinct sides of the occult world, and one of them does white magic or light magic, and the other does very dark and very nasty magic. And then there's gray magic, which is kind of a blend between the two.
Well, I would argue, just using, again, finger in the air, that liberty is dark magic, and that freedom is white magic.
Could be. I'll have to think about that. All of this quote unquote magic, though, comes with gods and goddesses and individuals or entities, I should say, that are worshipped. So Lucifer's one entity that's worshipped, but there's other gods in the pantheon of gods, and Quetzalcoatl is just another one of the gods in the pantheon of gods. He's a feathered serpent god. So this is from the article. I'll read you a bit of it. Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent god of the pantheon of gods, mainly found in connection with the Aztecs and other groups in South America. Gary Wayne cites Quetzalcoatl as coming from the ancient lost city of Atlantis in his book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy. Cisco Wheeler says that serpent dragons are always associated with great masters and adepts of magic in the Great White Brotherhood. Regional names are applied to designate them in whatever location they're found. They're called the Nagas in India, the Adders in Great Britain, in Mexico the Jadi, in Egypt the Quetzalcoatl. Collectively, Cisco says they're called the serpents of wisdom. One of the Montauk Project survivors, Jerusha Isold, says that she was taught about Quetzalcoatl as a child in the Montauk programs, and to her he was a feathered white serpent that provided a good cop, bad cop alternative to the black sun or the Tule sun. They were two heads of the same snake, she said. In the book Secrets of Odd Fellowship, Quetzalcoatl was also called the Lord of the Four Winds and was invoked during Navajo and Blackfeet rituals. Manly P. Hall, father of Freemasonry, says that Quetzalcoatl was one of the, quote, 12 mystic and enlightened teachers who possessed the fullest measure of those intellectual virtues that sustain civilization, inspiring others to more enlightened codes of living, whatever that means exactly. He says that the other 11 teachers are Akhenaten, Lao Tse, Hermes, Trismegistus, Plato, Orpheus, Jesus Christ, Zoroaster, Muhammad, Buddha, Padmansabha, and Confucius, and I probably mangled a couple of those names. So Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent god, and there's a group in the occult called the Order of Quetzalcoatl, and they abbreviate it Q. Q, the group, was involved in trafficking, especially between the U.S. and Mexico, and it's associated with the Shriners, which is a division of, well, it's a higher up, on the ladder of Freemasonry,
like 34th degree Freemason.
Something like that, yeah. The Shriners have some pretty awful tales of what goes on in their group meetings, etc. So they may be pleasant during parades, but behind the scenes they do pretty nasty stuff. So Q, the Order of Quetzalcoatl, seems to be behind what we call the Q movement. So it's the originating group, kind of like I think of them kind of like MJ12 is the originating group of a lot of interesting things that connected to UFOs and secret space stuff. So it's just one of the other groups, many orders of in the occult. And
Majestic.
interestingly, Michael Flynn is one of the highest ranking members of the Q movement. So you can imagine he might be part of the Order of Quetzalcoatl, although he hasn't been named of that group specifically. But we can say
Is he a
might
Knight
be.
of Malta too? I can't.
I'm not sure. He's probably some kind of a knight of something. I don't know his rank specifically.
I
Maybe
want to
somebody
say.
would know that and would put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is all totally interesting. I think that we could probably go for 5 more hours, but I, I think at an hour and 37 minutes, we should probably wrap it up here. So Wild Tangent has a question. I don't know that I have an answer to this question, which is they said Kim Manners. I don't know who Kim Manners is.
I don't either.
Worked on a show called Supernatural. Do you know it? Yes, I know the show because my daughter used to watch it when she was 13 or 14 years old. And at that time she was living with me. Many of the names were in the script. I assume that you mean many of the names of the people that we've been mentioning on the show today.
They
But
do a lot of television reveals, especially in the fantasy sci-fi genres. A lot of that stuff is things that are going on in the occult. I think of like Stargate SG-1 and some of the Doctor Who type series.
Well,
It's
Stargate.
more-
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, Stargate. There was a government program called Stargate that my friend Matthew Crawford was actually involved in as a kid. That was a remote viewing program. And one of the things that I think they do with media and television is that they do something called signature reduction, and I've written articles about it. And signature reduction is where you have a program like a child trafficking, drug trafficking program where people are referring to each other as Q. And what you do is you come up with a counterintelligence program that's completely separate and different.
Yes.
Right. And then you execute that counterintelligence program so that when people go searching, when researchers are trying to find out information about Q,
Bingo.
the only thing that they can find out about is all of these 4chan or 8chan drops that people have been doing. And they don't find out about the underground occult movement that's taken the same.
I run into that all the time, and it's obvious and maddening and frustrating. And
It's called signature reduction. It's a program. Newsweek did an article about it. Well, with that, I'm going to let you know that if you have any questions about NLP, just call me. And I'll tell you what I know. I don't pretend to be like the world's greatest. I don't practice. I tell my wife this. She accused me of being a hypnotist one day. And I said, hypnotists practice. It's like the difference between being a hypnotist and recognizing hypnotism is like the difference between being a football player and watching a football game. I can see a down and out. I can see a slam dunk.
You can identify it. Yeah.
I can identify it, but don't ask me to do one.
I hear you. On that point, one of the comments on YouTube was said that my website looked occultic, and I'm a researcher on the occult, and I'm an exposer of the occult. So yes, you're going to find occultic material on my website, but it's as a means of explaining it, and it's as a means of educating yourself so that you don't get caught up in what they try to catch us all up in, and so it's primarily an education. It's an educational journey for me. It's been a personal education journey, and one that I have shared publicly. And because I thought exactly what you emailed me before, this show, which is it takes a lot of time to follow whistleblowers, and it has taken basically the past 5 years of my life, all day, every day, 7 days a week, pretty much, with a few breaks to do that. And I don't think that anybody else should ever have to do that. And that's why I share speaks so that the time that it takes me to learn, nobody else has to put in, and hopefully it's valuable.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great resource, and I'm looking forward to digging into your content, and I guess that's the new word, your stuff.
My stuff.
That you're putting out there, so if people want to support you, I'm going to remove this so that they can read the screen. If people want to support you, they can find you at veronicaswift.blog and veronicaswiftblog.substack.com.
And I also have a locals. It's just veronicaswift.locals.com. It's locals is like Patreon. So if you want to be a supporter at $2 a month, you can do that. Also gives you a chance to ask me questions. I'm getting to the point where I can't answer everybody's questions anymore. So I will be focusing on the locals stuff first. Yeah, veronicaswift.blog has my deep dives. It's $26 a year for 350 articles, which is a pretty good deal.
That's a pretty good deal.
Substack on Wednesdays, I do free short free articles that don't take me too much time, but also if you're new to this stuff, they're not very overwhelming, so you kind of ease your way into it without having blowing your brains out your ears, which I certainly don't want to have happen to anybody. This is hard. It's hard information. It's difficult information, and if you're new to it, it's definitely worth learning. It's definitely worth getting over the grief and the that hump that we all have in the beginning. It's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this stuff is real.
Right.
Afterwards, yeah.
I read Kathy O'Brien. I think that the first book that just beat me over the head was, I read The Secret Team, Fletcher Prouty. That's a really good book. But Kathy O'Brien's Transformation of America was like getting hit in the head with a 2x4.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. It's really hard, and I try to break it down so that it's not as emotionally impacting, because I really do feel like it's valuable, and we all need to know something about it for self-protection. So they don't come get us.
There's enough people out there in the world right now who understand that whatever it is that they're being told isn't what's really happening.
Yep.
And so then the next step becomes, well, if that's not what's happening, then how do I figure out what is happening?
Right. And hopefully what I've got here will help tremendously with that.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, in my email to you, I think that you and I are both trying to do the same thing. We're taking different approaches, but that's why the internet winds up becoming the thing that is going to wind up saving us if they don't take our ability to talk to each other away from us.
Exactly. Well, it's been a great time. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hopefully we can do it again in the future sometime.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Veronica. And I'll talk to you again soon.